If I could ask you now to please rise for the posting of the colors by the Medicek Junior Marine Corps Color Guard. Thank you. Thank you again to the Medicek Junior Marine Corps Color Guard for doing that for us again this year. Please be seated. I want to welcome you this evening to our 29th annual John Hemphill dinner. My name is Rich Phillips. I am the president of the Historical Society this year for about 3 more hours, at which point I will get, as I've said a couple times tonight, the best title in any organization, immediate past president. Appreciate everybody being here and supporting us in this event each year. Your help and your being here and supporting us is what makes the work of the Society possible, and appreciate you being here. I want to recognize the special guests that we have here with us this evening, and I'll ask them to stand as I call their names and ask you to hold applause until everybody has been introduced. First, we have justices from the Texas Supreme Court, current justices. Chief Justice Nathan Hecht. We can applaud him. Justice Jeff Boyd, Justice John Devine, Justice Brett Busby, Justice Jane Bland, Justice Rebecca Huddle, and Justice Evan Young. Welcome to the current court. We also have a number of former Texas Supreme Court justices in attendance. If you'll please stand and hold your applause till the end of the list. Former Chief Justice Thomas Phillips, former Chief Justice Wallace Jefferson, Justice Rudy Sondock, Justice Raul Gonzalez, Justice Craig Enoch, Chief Judge Priscilla Richmond of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, Dean Alberto Gonzalez, Justice Dale Wainwright, Justice Paul Green, Justice Harriet O'Neill, Judge Jeff Brown, now a judge on the Southern District of Texas, and Justice Eva Guzman. Let's have a round of applause for our former justices. We also have with us many jurists from other courts, from the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, from our Texas state courts and trial courts and county courts at law. If you are a current justice or judge, would you please stand and let us recognize you? Thank you. I should say also some judges and justices from our newest courts in Texas, from the 15th Court of Appeals and from our business court. We also have several leaders here with us from the State Bar, and we appreciate their attendance tonight and their support of this event. If you'd please rise so we can recognize you. President Steve Benish, President-elect Santo Vargas, immediate past President Cindy Tisdale, immediate past Chair of the Board Kenan Wooten, and our Executive Director Trey Apfel. Finally, I want to recognize and thank this year's dinner chair, Kendall Hanks, Stand up. Kendall's done a great job helping me to get this event prepared and put together with the able assistance, as always, of Sharon Sandel and Mary Sue Miller. If you see them, please thank them as well. We appreciate everything that Kendall has done. At this point, I'd like to invite up Chief Justice Nathan Hecht, Jonathan Smaby, and Judge Audrey Moorhead. Mr. Smaby is Executive Director of the Texas Center for Legal Ethics, and Judge Moorhead is the Chair of the Center, and they're going to be presenting this year's Chief Justice Jack Pope Professionalism Award.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate it. Good evening, everybody. Welcome, welcome to the dinner. We won't take too much time before you want to eat. I want to thank the Society for allowing us to be here. Thank you, whoever did that over there. I appreciate it. The Society and Sharon Sandel for having us on this program, as they do. As Rich said, I'm up here with Judge Audrey Moorhead, who is the chair of the Texas Center for Legal Ethics. I'm the executive director of the Texas Center for Legal Ethics. And for the last 16 years, we have given the Chief Justice Jack Pope Professionalism Award to an appellate lawyer or an appellate judge who presents the highest standards of integrity and civility following the example set by Chief Justice Pope. And as I like to say every year, this award is not about accomplishments, although all of our honorees are quite accomplished. It's rather about the manner in which these people conduct themselves, both professionally and personally, while reaching the heights of our profession. And we all know that the worst of our profession, none of whom is here tonight, but the worst of our profession gets a lot of attention. And that's why it's so important that we have awards like this to honor the people who really strive to make our profession great and make our lives better every day. So tonight's honoree is one of those people, and to announce the award winner this year is the Chief Justice, Nathan Hecht.
In 1989, Warren Harris and I were newbies at the Supreme Court of Texas. I'd just been elected justice, and Warren was clerking for newly appointed and elected Justice Eugene Cook, having started with Gene's predecessor, Justice Jim Wallace. Not long into our jobs, Justice Cook had an idea to promote civility and professionalism in the bar. And as his idea took shape, work was a joint effort with justices and law clerks pitching in. And on November 7, the Supreme Court and the Court of Criminal Appeals signed a joint order adopting the Texas Lawyers' Creed. Warren had a hand in that. Warren had a hand in the court's work, and the creed was, as they say, and he was, as they say, present at the creation. I think the experience infected Warren. The creed, professionalism, became part of him. Its values were his. It was his mindset, his heart. Over the course of his years of appellate practice, he's become Exhibit A for how the creed instills not only high ethical standards in a lawyer, but the ability to succeed as well. Some of that is reflected in Warren's extensive service to the bar. He's been president of the American Academy of Appellate Lawyers, president of the Houston Bar Association, president of the Houston Young Lawyers, chair of the Texas Bar Foundation Fellows, president of the University of Houston Law Foundation, and the Law Alumni Association, his alma mater. That's just to list a few of them. But Warren's professionalism has extended beyond the practice. Warren has been chair of the Houston Volunteer Lawyers Association, a major player in efforts to improve access to justice to the poor. And further still, Warren has served as president of tonight's host, the Texas Supreme Court Historical Society, working to develop civics courses for lawyers to present in public schools, and he has taught those courses himself. He proposed the Society's very successful Taming Texas book series. And if you haven't read the Taming Texas books, you can go online and get them. You can do the fair thing and order them and pay money for them and support the historic. I'm not saying that, I'm just telling you that's one thing you can do. Written by James Haley and Marilyn Duncan, chronicling the development of the Texas legal system and aimed at middle-class students. Professionalism, by which we mean adherence to the values expressed in the Texas Lawyers' Creed, in our ethical canons, and in our commitment to the civility in our practices, is not always easy. Civility is not always easy. And it's harder these days as our divided society is distinctly uncivil. But over the years, Warren Harris has consistently walked the walk, just as Justice Gene Cook did, his mentor, and just as my predecessor and friend, Chief Justice Jack Pope did. Each year, the Texas Center for the Judiciary presents its Professionalism Award in Chief Justice Pope's name to the Texas appellate lawyer or judge who epitomizes the highest level of professionalism and integrity. Former recipient Lynn Liberato, senior counsel at Haynes & Boone's Houston office, nominated Warren for this year's award. Of Warren, Lynn says, his career path and the volunteer work that he's done have all been to further our system of justice. Wallace's interest is in furthering respect and understanding of that system. Warren Harris brings honor to the award as it honors him. Warren can't be present this evening, and to accept the award for him is his Bracewell law partner, Jeff Oldham, a clerk for Chief Justice Rehnquist, and former governor's counsel and a society fellow. Come on up, Jeff. Congratulations to Warren Harris as this year's recipient of the Chief Justice Jack Pope Professionalism Award.
Thank you, Chief, for those gracious and very well-deserved remarks. Warren is incredibly sorry that he cannot be here today to accept this award himself, but I'm very honored to be able to accept it on his behalf. I know how deeply touched Warren is and how thankful he is to everybody involved for giving him this tremendous honor, this very prestigious award. So again, on Warren's behalf, thank you very much.
And now I'm going to call up fellow of the Society, David Keltner, who is here on behalf of the chair of the Fellows, David Beck, to give us a Fellows report.
Thank you, Rich. I'm standing in for David Beck, who could not be here. David was the person who started the Fellows, and we are sorry he couldn't be here. If you don't know, the Fellows of the Society are the ones that give generous annual contributions each year to fund the educational effort, Taming Texas, that Chief Justice Hecht just talked about. There have been 4 books in that series. The last one came out this year, and it's about time. It's about women in Texas law. All right, good stuff. We have 10 present and past women who have served on the Texas Supreme Court. Of course, at the Fifth Circuit, we have Chief Judge Priscilla Richmond, and her successor, Jennifer Elred, will be soon there. So this is a fantastic program. We use this for 7th graders throughout Texas. 25,000 7th graders have heard about the rule of law in Houston, Texas alone because of the Houston Bar Association and these books. That effort's been taken to Fort Worth, Dallas, and Austin as well. Justice Busby, by the way, is the one who helped us get everything off the ground in Austin. All of this is made possible, of course, by the fellows. So, one last thing. The people who give the money for this do so every year without fail. And I would like to ask the fellows of the society, you can tell them by beautiful light blue name tags. But if the fellows would please stand and be recognized, we'd appreciate it. Thank you all very much. We very much appreciate that. That, Mr. Chair, is the fellows' report. Thank you.
Thank you, David. If you might indulge me in one short story before we get on to the rest of dinner about my ties to Texas, which are a little bit weird, I grant you. I was born in Salt Lake City, Utah, and one might wonder how a Mormon kid like me ended up president of the Texas Supreme Court Historical Society. As they say, I wasn't born here, but I got here as fast as I could. But I found out later in my life, after we moved here, that there's a connection to Texas I didn't really know much about until recently. And that is that my grandfather, who had had scarlet fever when he was a kid and therefore couldn't serve overseas in World War II, was stationed here at Camp Fannin in Tyler during World War II. On a furlough, he went home to Salt Lake City, married my grandmother, and then they came back to Tyler and spent some time here. Obviously, not enough, or they didn't really feel that great about it, because I think the minute the war was over and he was discharged, they hightailed it back to Utah, where my dad was born, and eventually we moved to Texas. When my grandma at one point came to visit us after we moved here, I remember driving out to Tyler, and I remember we drove by where they'd lived, and she talked about a few things. I think she had some fairly fond memories of Texas, but obviously not enough to stay. After she passed away and people were going through her papers and things in her house, one of my cousins found a map. And I want to show you the map because it's kind of funny. So there it is. That's her handwriting on it. I don't know if she copied this from somebody or if she made it up herself. If you can see the top, it is a Texans map of the USA, parentheses, a handy pocketbook guide for any damn Yankee. The state of Texas takes up the entire middle half of the country, and everything labeled in there is labeled as world's biggest something. So for the Aggies in the room, Texas A&M is labeled as the world's biggest officer school. It was World War II at the time. We have the world's biggest ranch, the world's biggest port, the world's longest ship channel, the world's biggest piney woods, world's longest cow trail. The Rio Grande is the world's driest river, and on and on and on. So it was a lot of fun to find that map after we'd lived here in Texas for a while. I don't know exactly how she and my grandfather felt about Texas. My grandpa died when my dad was about 11, and so I never knew him. But I know she at least walked away from Texas knowing how Texans feel about Texas. And I'm sure that somewhere she and my grandpa are a little bit surprised that some of their grandkids are native Texans, a lot of their great-grandkids are native Texans, and that they've got a grandson who has served as president of the Texas Supreme Court Historical Society. But I'm proud to call myself a Texan. I'm proud to call myself a Texas lawyer. I'm proud to be part of the history of this society. And as I come to the end of my term as president, I'm proud of where we are and what we've done. Over the past few years, we've updated financial controls and audit policies, which isn't very exciting or sexy, but it is important. And it has ensured that we have a strong financial position now and going forward so that we'll be able to continue to do the work of the society. Our Archives Committee, I'm extremely proud of what has been going on there, which for so many years has focused mostly on our portrait collection, but is now reaching out to focus on documents and other things that we have in our possession, to catalog them and see what we need to do to preserve them, and to reach out and begin to collect more of that kind of archival material so that we can continue to preserve the history of Texas, the Texas Supreme Court and the Courts of Appeals of Texas. We have systematized the handling of our portrait collection, and we are now starting the process of updating the Society's website, which is well needed. So I'm proud of what we've been doing. I'm proud of what's coming up. I cannot let this occasion pass without expressing my undying thanks to Mary Sue Miller and Sharon Sandel. Without them, the society doesn't run. We won't get anything done. They are the glue that holds this together and keeps the trains running. And I'm grateful for everything they've done. I also need to thank Justice John Browning. If you read the journal when it comes out, you have John Browning to thank. He spends countless hours planning those issues well in advance and then following up with authors. I know that because he's had to really follow up with me a lot and hounding us to get our articles in so that he can get the issues out and get it published. And it is a fantastic resource. If you don't read it regularly when it comes out, please do so. Sign up so you can join the society, sign up and get the emails. It's available on the website. You don't have to be a member to read the journal. It's fantastic every single issue, particularly this issue. Extremely proud of that one, which honors Chief Justice Nathan Hecht and his contributions. Please read that. We'll have more about that later on in the program, but please do go read that issue. There's a lot of good stuff in there. So at this time then, I'd like to thank everybody for what you have done to support the society, what you are doing to support the society, and what you will do going forward. And it's been my honor to be able to be the president this past year. As president, I get to make the President's Award. And I'm thrilled this year that I get to give that award to Dr. Bill Criss. Bill has been a longtime society supporter. He's served on the board of trustees. He is well known in this room, but I have a few things I ought to say about him as he's coming up. First, in 2016, he received the Chief Justice Jack Pope Professionalism Award, which we just saw awarded to Warren Harris. He received that at this dinner. In addition to a law degree, Dr. Criss has earned master's degrees in, and this is just crazy, political science, Christian theology, and English literature, and on top of that, a PhD in history. Are there anything else you're working on right now, Bill? Like, are you working on another master, something we should know about? Really? He's also a member of the American Law Institute. This year, Bill published his book, 6 Constitutions Over Texas, with Texas A&M University Press. That book is the result of a decade of scholarly work that Bill put into it to get it written. It is an important addition to our understanding of Texas constitutional history and legal history. From the 59 delegates who assembled in Washington on the Brazos to draft the first Constitution of Texas to the current Constitution drafted in 1876 and its lengthy Bill of Rights, the book reveals the saga of Texas Constitution across the centuries. Since its publication, Bill has been active traveling around the state to talk about it and promote it. He was part of the Society's presentation at the Texas State Historical Association's annual meeting in College Station. He's also presented in Dallas, Fort Worth, Corpus Christi, Houston, and probably other places I don't know about, talking about the book. The July 2024 issue of the Southwestern Historical Quarterly has a very favorable review of the book. The review says the book offers insights into the legal history of Texas with a thoroughly researched, well-written narrative that should appeal to academics and non-academics alike. Go buy the book. It also concludes with, this book is a welcome addition to Texas historiography that furthers appreciation of Texas's governing documents and expands academic understanding of the motives, identities, real and imagined, and experiences of the Texans who crafted them. It is an incredible book. If you don't have it, recommend you buy it. It's available through Texas A&M University Press or on Amazon.com. And the other reason, there is a selfish reason for me promoting that, and that is also that Bill has very generously assigned to the Society all of the author's royalties for this book. And so at this time, to recognize Bill's contributions to Texas legal history and to the mission of the Society, I'm pleased to award him the President's Award. If you come up this time.
Just buy the book. Thank you very much. It's a great honor. I thought you were just going to give me a plaque.
Yeah, you know. All right, at this time, go ahead and enjoy your dinner, and I'll be back in a few minutes with the rest of the program. Well, a little more than a few minutes. Enjoy dinner. My notes say I'm to call up Chief Justice Nathan Hecht, former Chief Justice Thomas R. Phillips, and former Chief Justice Wallace Jefferson, but they beat me to the dais. and let me know they're ready for me to come up, and let's get started. So, none of them need any introduction, but I do want to take a minute to say just a few things and share a couple of thoughts before they get started. Chief Justice Nathan L. Hecht has been a judge for 43 years. He was first appointed to the district court in Dallas County, I think the 95th district court, is that right? In 1981. I was 7 years old at the time and hadn't yet moved to Texas, by the way. That was a couple years in the future. He was then elected to the Dallas Court of Appeals in 1986. I was in Texas by then. Couldn't vote for him, though. And he was elected to the Texas Supreme Court in 1988 and took office January the 1st of 1989. In 2013, he was appointed Chief Justice. He has served longer on the Texas Supreme Court than any justice in history. During his time on the Texas Supreme Court, he has served with 39 or so other justices, depending on how you count. It could be 38, it could be 41, there's some debate, but it's around that, which is roughly, by the way, 1/3 of all of the justices who have ever served on the Texas Supreme Court in its history. Now, that statistic is a little bit skewed by the fact that from its until 1945, there were only 3 justices on the court. They've only had 9 since 1945, so it does skew a little bit this direction, but it's still quite an amazing statistic. The other one I love, and this was in Justice Willett's column in the Journal, that at one point in 2005, Chief Justice Hecht had been a member of the court for longer than the other 8 justices combined. Chief Justice Phillips joined the Texas Supreme Court about a year before Chief Justice Hecht. They served together until Chief Justice Phillips' retirement in 2004 for a total of about 15 years. Chief Justice Hecht has now served on the court longer without Chief Justice Phillips than he did with him, but Chief Justice Phillips is still the justice with whom Chief Justice Hecht served the longest. Chief Justice Jefferson joined the court in 2001 and was noted this afternoon at the portrait dedication, was the first African American on the Texas Supreme Court. When Chief Justice Phillips retired in 2004, he was appointed Chief Justice and became the first African American Chief Justice in the history of the court. When he retired from the court in 2013, he and Chief Justice Hecht had served together for about 12 years. And aside from Chief Justice Phillips, there's only 1 or 2 other justices who served longer with Chief Justice Hecht than Chief Justice Jefferson did. So I cannot think of any 2 people, Chief Justice Phillips and Chief Justice Jefferson, who are better suited to have this conversation this evening with our longest serving justice and to reflect on his time at the court. So with that, I will turn it over to the 3 of them for a conversation about Chief Justice Hecht's time on the court. Thank you.
Yes. And we're going to start with one of Chief Justice Hecht's signature contributions to the administration of justice, and that is his participation and leadership in rulemaking. And for that, we have our distinguished friend and guest, Chair of the Supreme Court Rules Advisory Committee, Chip Babcock.
Thank you very much. Well, if the Chief Justice had a nickname, and so far as I know he doesn't, but we should give him one, it would be Doomsday. Doomsday Nathan. Why do I say that? Because many of his signature reforms that he led, both through the Supreme Court Advisory Committee and through the court, and then gaining acceptance by the bar and the other members, the constituents of the civil justice system, were met with predictions of doom. The system is going to explode if we do what the chief wants us to do. The first was no evidence summary judgment. That was my entry into the Supreme Court Advisory Committee as a member, and there was near nuclear war about no evidence summary judgment, and the predictions were that the civil justice system would crash, plaintiffs wouldn't get a fair shake, all the judges would throw cases out, and there'd be no jury trials left, and we wouldn't be able to survive it. Somehow we have managed to do that, and it was through Chief Justice Hecht's leadership that it happened. We brought into our system e-filing. That came through the Supreme Court Advisory Committee, which worked on rules, and we brought outside people in to advise us on it. And when that was all ready to be implemented, a number of constituents in the civil justice system came to Chief Justice Hecht and said, it will not work. The system will crash. We can't do this. Now, some of those people were very powerful. I won't name them, but the chief said, no, we're going to do this, and it's going to work, and here we are. And then the pandemic hit us, and the chief judge of another state called Nathan and said, what are we going to do? And that state did not have e-filing. And Justice Hecht said, well, we're just fine. We're going to get Zoom licenses for our judges. We're going to be able to have hearings remotely, trials remotely, and we won't have any trouble getting papers filed with the court because they can be filed electronically. Far from the system crashing, that reform, which was really the inspiration of and driven by Chief Justice Hecht, would not have happened without him, and it saved our civil justice system for a period of time that was very distressful in our country and our state. Probably the reform that came through the Supreme Court Advisory Committee that I think the chief would say he's most proud of is not one that was met with wails of doom, and probably not very many people here in this room even know about it. But we reformed the justice rules, justice of the peace rules, and the point was made in our meetings, and Nathan may have made it himself, that the justice courts handle a huge percentage of our litigation in this state, and yet those rules were antiquated, they were difficult. In fact, in some ways, they were even difficult to understand what they were trying to get at, and we revised that. I could go on and on. We revised our discovery rules under his leadership, and then 25 years later, we examined it again and tweaked what has been a remarkably good system of discovery in a very difficult area. And I'll just close with one reform that I think has touched everybody in this room that technically did not go through the Supreme Court Advisory Committee, but it was an important reform. As many of you know, Nathan and I have been friends since we both started practicing law, I think the same year or maybe within a year of each other. Nathan with Locke Purnell, the fine Dallas law firm that still has Locke in the name anyway. Now Locke Lord, I think, and maybe will be something else not too far in the future. And I started at Jackson Walker, which is now known as Jackson Walker. So I've known him, and once he got on the court, periodically, he would chafe under the rules of his predecessors as chief that they would not require opinions to be finished in the term that they were argued. In other words, they could languish for years. And the best line I ever heard in one of these meetings was spoken by an author who wrote about a book about Lincoln, and he was here to tell us about Lincoln. I don't know if many of you were probably in the room, but he said it's a little-known fact that Abraham Lincoln argued a case in the Texas Supreme Court. And he paused, and everybody said, wow, I didn't know that. And he said, and he's still waiting for his decision. Well, after chafing under these two prior chiefs, Nathan created a rule that said you have to get your opinions out by the end of the term. And that is now on its third or fourth year. And it is as a practitioner, it's a wonderful reform. But I've been the chair now for 26 years of the Supreme Court Advisory Committee, and I tell people without exception, and have for all that time, that professionally, it's absolutely the best thing I do. It's rewarding, I think it's important, and to be able to serve under Nathan Hecht has been a blessing and then some. So thanks, Chief.
Nathan's influence has not only been in Texas, and of course it was in the rules for Texas, as you just heard from Chip, but Nathan was also appointed to the Rules Committee for the country by Chief Justice John Roberts. And this kind of shows you that his influence is extended well beyond Texans' borders. And one thing that we wanted to highlight was not just the rules, but access to justice. The Chief Justice gets to, Nathan, access to justice now. When I became Chief Justice in 2004, within about a year or two, our great Harriet O'Neill left the court. She was our liaison to access to justice. So it came, Harriet O'Neill, wherever you are. So I had the obligation to appoint somebody to take her place, big shoes to fill. And I remember the conversation I had with Nathan about whether he would accept that. And he thought about it long and hard, but he is a man of faith, he is a man of compassion, and he knew that access to justice should not be only for those who can afford a lawyer. And so he took that and ran with it in Texas and made the Texas Access to Justice Commission and Foundation stronger than it's ever been. And then he took it national. And I want to show a video about his impact across the United States.
Good evening. My name is John Levy, and I'm so very privileged to serve as the 10th chairman of the board of directors of the Legal Services Corporation. And tonight, it is my honor and great pleasure to recognize your extraordinary Chief Justice Nathan Hecht for his role as a national leader in efforts to expand access to justice for low-income Americans. Chief Justice Hecht has been an absolutely tireless advocate of public funding for civil legal aid, both in Texas and nationally, and a stalwart champion of the nation's Legal Services Corporation, the largest funder of civil legal aid, supporting 130 civil legal aid programs in every congressional district, including 3 outstanding programs covering all of Texas. Chief Justice Hecht has been a frequent and powerful speaker at LSC forums and congressional hearings, and has also dedicated his time and expertise to a number of significant LSC initiatives. For example, he served on LSC's disaster task force, which promoted better cooperation between the emergency management community, legal services providers, the private bar, the judiciary, and other stakeholders in helping low-income disaster survivors. And it has led to increased funding for civil legal aid in connection with natural disasters. Most recently, he was a very important witness for the Senate Judiciary Committee's hearing, Closing the Justice Gap, How to Make the Civil Justice System Accessible to All Americans. And at that hearing in the United States Capitol, Chief Justice Hecht spoke eloquently about how communities and the courts are impacted by the crisis in civil legal aid. He also suggested strategic changes to the legal system that would help close our nation's justice gap that, as he frequently points out, finds 92% of the civil legal needs of low-income Americans going with no or inadequate legal assistance. And he encouraged all lawyers to join the cause of promoting equal access to justice. For as the chief stirringly put it, as a part of his recent Senate testimony, and I quote, unmet needs for basic civil legal services, the justice gap, direly impact people's lives, court processes and efficiency, the economy and society. I must add, as a steward of judicial office, that the justice gap also threatens the integrity of the rule of law itself, suggesting that it applies not to all and not equally as promised, but only to people of means, unquote. Over the years, Chief Justice Hecht has crafted many persuasive op-eds and delivered many compelling speeches on the crisis in civil legal aid, and every year weighs in on behalf of increased funding for LSC with key members of Congress at crucial times in the appropriations process. He has also been a strong leader in helping courts around the country identify new and innovative practices for delivering justice. Under his determined leadership, the Conference of Chief Justices and Court Administrators has continued to be a strong advocate on Capitol Hill, paving the way for Chief Justices across the country to make their voices heard on behalf of access to justice for low-income people, and calling out the serious challenge of having over 50% of the civil cases in state courts finding one or both parties unrepresented, and the threat that this poses for the rule of law in this country. We at LSC are profoundly grateful for Chief Justice Hecht's deep commitment to expanding access to justice, because as the Chief has so memorably stated, justice for only those who can afford it is neither justice for all nor justice at all. Congratulations, Nathan, on your remarkable service to Texas and to our country.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much. I think they want the program to be over. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Justice Gonzalez.
So, you came to the court with a distinguished legal career as a partner at a firm that still sort of exists, and a prestigious judicial clerkship, and a two-level service on both lower levels of the state judiciary. And you wanted something of an upset that we need not rehash at this late date. But what was your biggest surprise when you got inside this court as opposed to just looking at it on the outside?
Tom talked me into running for the Supreme Court back in 1988, but I've forgiven him since because it worked out pretty well. But I did not know, and I don't think very many of you know, the deliberative process that goes on inside a collegial court like the Supreme Court of Texas. And it is very foreign today to the divisive discussions that we have in society and politics and on other things. But the thing I was impressed by, Tom was a great leader, and our good friend Oscar Mawsey was on the court at the time. Our friend Lloyd Doggett, who is supporting some security legislation for state judges as we speak, was on the court. Justice Gonzalez was on the court, and we didn't always see eye to eye, and that was to be expected. But you went around the table and you talked about things and you understood differences, and you went and wrote them down, and then you tried to go to the next case. So I think that's my life today, and my sense of it is that outside that, there's a lot of difficulty in trying to reach that. People tell me they have trouble talking with their families at Thanksgiving about politics. Well, good heavens. It's just that you can have very deep disagreements and yet understand that the process is very important and has been tested, and I didn't know that. I mean, I just never, I would have been a trial judge on the Court of Appeals. You're dealing with two other people on cases, so that part of it was amazing to me. And the dynamic of it, Franklin Spears, I mean, the judges who were on our court at the time really participated in the development of the law.
So you're talking about the court and its process on a collegial court, and it's an objective discussion. It's very serious, but it is civil. Is that different from the legislature, would you say? And then let me ask you this. So we have three, independent branches. With the differences in the way the branches approach these tough issues, should the judicial branch stay in its lane and only do what judges do, and that is decide cases? Or is there any room for judges to work with the legislative and the executive branches to enhance public policy in the judicial field?
So that's a very complex question. It's a great question. And in deciding cases, we have to stay in our lane, because otherwise the judges lose their legitimacy. And you're supposed to be, as Chief Justice Roberts said at his confirmation hearing, calling the balls and strikes. You're supposed to be the umpire. You're not supposed to be on one side or the other. In the other two branches, you are supposed to take sides. You're supposed to take the side of your constituents. That's what you're supposed to do. That's what they sent you there for. But people don't send judges to the bench so that in this family court case or this misdemeanor case or this civil case that's come or whatever it is, that somehow or another you're friends with these people, or they have supported you, and therefore they're somehow or another your constituents. The law is your constituent, and so you're supposed to adhere to that as carefully as you can in deciding cases. But what has happened, and I think I haven't talked to Tom about this, but when I got to the Supreme Court, I thought you decided your cases and went home. That was your job. And we didn't like going to the legislature. We went over there to get money. We had budget issues. But the greater sort of administration of the judiciary was not something I thought a lot about. And as time has passed, that's become a big part of of judges' jobs, and particularly on the high court. So on our court, for example, we have liaisons. We split up our administrative work. So we have a liaison to the state bar, to the mental health commission, to the children's commission, to the business courts, to all these various different groups who are participating in the administration of justice. And it doesn't have anything to do with cases, but it has to do very really with how the people perceive that the justice system is operating. So over time, it has come to be that for all of us, and my friends on the federal bench here tonight, the Chief Justice Roberts said 3 years ago in his State of the Judiciary message, you got to get out there and teach civics, and you got to help people understand what's going on in the judiciary, and you got to help make it better, because otherwise we're seeing a distancing of people from trust in the justice system. So the two sides of the answer to the question are, in deciding cases, policy decisions are just not, not a judge's business. We have to leave those to the other two branches. In trying to make it work better, like with access to justice, if we're not out there, nobody's going to be. And so it's really important for the judiciary these days to be a part of those discussions.
You talk about the civic responsibility, I guess, that the judiciary has to explain this distinction to the public. And it's often said the one good thing about judicial elections is judges get to engage the people and educate them about that distinction. I know you've been trying to do that in 42 years of campaigns. Has it become harder in recent decades? You get a different reaction from people, like they say, we don't believe that.
Yeah, I mean, you say one good thing about running for office is being able to do that. And I'm not sure what 2 or 3 is on that list. but maybe that's one. I don't know. I'm not for electing judges, and I never have been. So, it is very important to try to explain that to people, and especially important these days because the question in civil society today is, whose side are you on? And they hear about an opinion from the U.S. Supreme Court, and they say, well, I don't agree with that. So you're on a side. And then you hear about another opinion, and say, well, I agree with that. And the reaction, and I get that. I mean, I understand that when that's your perspective and that's what you hear, that those are the kinds of decisions that you make. But in the meantime, there's 30,000 state judges in the country, and they decide 70 million cases a year, and they don't have anything to do with this. They just have to do with trying to do the right thing between families and the government and their citizens, and trying to convince people that that's very important to them, apart from which side does this fall on is a hard job. But I will say, public surveys that the courts have been doing for the last several years have shown that the public trust and confidence in the courts is going down. But the last 2 years it's trending up. So maybe some of it's working.
You say, and it's true, it's hard to convince people. But I found it is one thing that the chief can do is convene people.
Yeah.
And so when there is social unrest and there's a problem that you see facing Texas, you have convened. So would you talk about what happened in Dallas after that the shooting of the police and the unrest in Dallas. What did you and presiding Judge Keller do after that?
We convened a conference at a university in South Dallas. Justice Guzman was one of our point people working on that. 6 police officers had been killed in Dallas during a demonstration, and there was a lot of unrest about the whole thing. On every side there was. And so part of the purpose of the meeting was to talk about implicit bias. Well, you know, we can't talk about that phrase anymore because it's off limits. But there is implicit bias in just our daily lives, and so we convene law enforcement, churches, educators, the local government, the police chief, judges. They said, you know, we don't want to come. I said, you got to come to this. So they came. Bunch of lawyers and talked about it for a day. And it was very constructive. And everybody came away from that saying, you know, I just had never really heard, emphasis on the word heard, what people had to say about this. And sitting around the room in a non-adversarial environment and saying, well, what about this? What about this? And not in issues that were politicized, but just in, is there a trend in family cases to award more support under these circumstances or not? And then looking at statistics and saying, yeah, there's a trend, all right. And so that it's not one side or the other politically, it's just about how the system is operating that you can talk about. But kind of the premise of the whole thing is the people who are going into those cases, they get that. They think, you know, I went in and I said this and that, and the other side said this and that, and this is what happened, and I don't understand that. And if they come away and they don't understand it, then the justice system needs to do a better job of explaining, well, this is why. So that people come away from, you want people to come away from the court system. I know this is exaggerated, but I mean, you want them to come away thinking, thank God for the courts. You know, I didn't know where to turn, and I finally got justice. And when they don't do that, when they're very cynical and disengaged, then you really have to work to try to make it better.
You served through a technological revolution, of course, and you've been a big part of, has already been mentioned tonight, in keeping Texas in the forefront of taking advantage of how technology can make the delivery of legal services cheaper, quicker, and more beneficial to all. What do you see for the future, since some people say we're just in the infancy of this technology? Is there going to be a Chief Justice robot one day? Yeah. You've licensed paralegals. Are you going to license artificial intelligence to represent the poor? What do you see looking forward? There's some people in here that are interested in what's going to happen in 40 or 50 years in our profession.
Well, I don't know 40 or 50, but when you and I started, we kept the docket on 3x5 cards.
Except for the Fifth Circuit certification that we lost.
Yeah. And we had mag card typewriters, and that was our case management system. And since then, we've got a computer a case management system for the appellate courts in Texas that most of you probably know about, that serves all the appellate courts in Texas. We don't have that kind of a system for the trial courts, but we're working on trying to get that developed forthwith. And I think we're probably about 2 years out. The big counties have that, but the smaller counties don't. So it would integrate everything, all the case filings in the state. So one thing that would do for appellate lawyers is it would make the record on appeal the push of a button. You really wouldn't have to do that. You would just tell the Court of Appeals, we're relying on the third amended petition and the fourth amended answer and the motion for summary judgment and this, and the court would just punch those buttons and there would be the documents. That's pretty much, I mean, that may be an oversimplification, but that's a lot the way it already works in the federal circuits. But it's always been a big step for us. So I think there'll be a lot of that, a movement toward that, and the process, AI can simplify that process by gathering all that data and putting it where it needs to be and making it accessible. Otherwise, Zoom is here. It's here to stay. It can't do everything. But in family cases, this is a proven fact in Texas and most other jurisdictions, maybe every jurisdiction. People who can access custody hearings, support hearings, those kinds of simple cases in the family courts by not leaving work and not having to drive downtown and sit around a courthouse all day long, can participate in that. And the user satisfaction from that is extremely positive. I mean, people feel like, even if they lost, they feel like, well, you know, at least I had a chance. Whereas if you say, well, take off work and spend a lot of money that you don't have and go speak Greek with the lawyers at the courthouse that you don't know you've never been there, and maybe it'll work out or not. I mean, I think that's a vast improvement. So as we kind of work through that, it doesn't work. Zoom doesn't work for everything. Some things need to happen at the courthouse. I get that. But remote hearings have made a huge difference. The one place that they have not made much of a difference, and this is none of my business as a civil judge, but it seems to me that they would bring a lot of very useful reform, much needed reform to the criminal justice system. And the misdemeanor courts are using it some. And again, easing the burden of people to get their case adjudicated. And so I'm hopeful that as time passes, that'll work too.
So we don't have a whole lot of time left, and I want to change direction just for a moment and ask you, Chief, where you got your values from. And I want you to talk a little bit about where you grew up, about your family, about your father and your mother.
Well, my family were farmers. My father, the best story I can tell you about him is when he was about 40, in his late 40s, he was a farmer, and he went to get a haircut one day, and he decided that he was never going to get his hair cut again if it cost more than a bushel of wheat. And back then, a haircut was about $2.10, and wheat was about $2 and a nickel. So he said, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it till it changes. Well, here we are 40 years later, and it hadn't changed. But Papa died with hair down in the middle of his back. And he came to my first investiture with Justice Kennedy there at the Supreme Court, and he had hair down in the middle of his back and a great big beard. And Governor Clements came up to him and said, "Mr. Heck, you don't look like Nathan's dad." And Papa just looked at him like, well, I don't know what Papa's thinking. He was probably thinking, well, you don't look like the governor. But I don't know. I don't know. And my good friend Rahul was taken aback by Papa's hair. But it was a, you can think, well, that's weird. But it was a matter of principle to Papa. It was just a way to hang on to something. But Papa and Mama were very devoted to principle. We grew up in a different world, and it was very important. And we were strong. We were strong in our faith. So it was those kinds of things that kind of got us through. Papa believed in the law. He believed in justice. He was a farmer, now get this, and so he saw a lot of things that he didn't understand and wasn't sure that they were right, but he believed in the justice system, and he was firm in that belief.
What would he and your family do when the whole crop was wiped out in a storm? What did you do? How did you survive?
He'd go back to business. He'd go back to work. I mean, it happened. I mean, I remember one of the most moving times in my life was we were getting ready for harvest. On the farm, harvest is everything. I mean, it's bigger than Christmas. I mean, it's everything. You work, and you hope, and you're counting on, when it comes to the middle of June, we're going to harvest a big wheat crop. And then in the middle of June, we get hailstorms. And a hailstorm comes in, and 15 minutes later, the crop is gone. The whole crop is gone. And that happened one afternoon. And I was a little boy, and I was hoping for the harvest. Now, I was a teenager. I was standing looking out the door, and I was just heartbroken. I just thought, oh my goodness, this is all gone. And Papa was sitting in there reading the newspaper. When it's over, we'll go back to work and we'll do something else. So there had to be some determination that life was going to be bigger than this event. But I credit them with those kinds of things.
Of course.
Yeah.
Given that background, how did you decide and how did they let you go to Yale? I don't know the answer to this.
How did what?
Why did they let you go to Yale, and what made you even think of Yale anyway?
Well, again, we're getting kind of down in stories, but I came home from high school, and a friend of mine who had gone to Yale 3 years earlier. This is a high school of 3,000 people. It's a pretty big high school.
Clovis?
Yeah, Clovis High School in a teeny little town in New Mexico. And he said, you should go to Yale. So I went home and I told my papa, I said, I was at school today and they said you should go to Yale. And he said, are you crazy? Do you know how much money we make? Well, I didn't know how much, but it wasn't very much. And he said, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard you say. And of course, I was just heartbroken. I didn't know what to do. I went to bed, crying, got up the next morning, and went out to breakfast. And Papa was sitting there, and he said, I'm sorry. He said, I shouldn't have said that last night. I want you to do whatever you want to do. how in the world it will work, but if that's what you want to do, you should do it. So that's what happened. And then, I mean, you know, back then, tuition wasn't very much, and so it worked out.
The last question that I have is, your last day in office will be at the end of December of this year. And you have had the kind of experience that no one else can match. Giving advice to the next chief, the next court, or the judiciary. What advice would you give with all the experience that you've had facing an uncertain future?
So I think we're at a very pivotal time right this minute, and all the data bears that out. All the surveys we take, all the docket studies that we do, that we're in a difficult time. So the first problem is the loss of public trust and confidence in the judiciary. And this is happening across the boards. The federal judges have always been ahead of the state judges in public trust and confidence in the surveys. Now they're way below us. Even the Supreme Court is below the state courts. So, and we're way down. So it's not anything to be proud of. I mean, everything's down. So we've got to get that up. And the way I think that you get it up is to make the system work better. You can't decide cases any differently. People don't like the decisions, that's, we're trying to do our best to follow the law. But I think we have to tell judges coming along and the judges who are there, again, what Chief Justice Roberts said 3 years ago, but lots of other people are saying, on every side of the political spectrum, the judges have got to make it work better. So that means it's easier to get to a hearing, it's easier to get a decision, it's cheaper. The courts act like they like you being there. The courts are user-friendly. I mean, I've said many times, if the courts were a business, we'd be bankrupt because we don't care what the customers think. But we've got to start caring about that. The second thing is that I think judicial independence is really threatened in all of this. Tom said earlier, when I was first running for office, somebody would come up to me and say, well, what do you think about whatever? And they wouldn't know any better, so they'd ask me about the death penalty. So, I could have but you could say, I can't talk to you about that. And they would say, oh, no, you're right. We shouldn't ask you. I'm sorry, I shouldn't ask you that question. Nowadays, when you're out on the campaign trail and they ask you that, they say, oh, yes, you can. I'm entitled to know. And what are you going to do about this case and this case? And so I think there's a real danger to that. But the hard answer to it is that you've got to justify judicial independence. You can't just say, well, we're judicially independent, go away. You've got to say, well, what difference does that make to you? And the answer is, well, the next time you come into court and you don't like the side that you're against, you want the judge to be fair. So I think you have to, so that's the second thing. And then the third thing is AI and tech. And it's going to change everything, and we're not, nobody knows exactly how. We're working with it at the Supreme Court on summaries. I know the circuit's looking at it. And lots of courts around, everybody around the country's looking at, businesses are looking at how can we use this to, and so the courts will have to do that too.
If AI writes one of your opinions, you'll put a footnote that says that.
Right.
Chief Justice Heck, you make us proud, and thank you for your service.
Well, it was a pleasure serving with you guys. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Hold on, don't go anywhere. Reach you back over.
All of us or just him?
Can't let you get off the dais quite yet. We have one last little surprise for you. I would like to invite up Dylan Drummond, who's got a presentation for you. If you've noticed the slide presentation that's been playing while we've been eating and as you came in, and you can look at it again as you leave, Dylan's responsible for assembling that group of slides, those pictures from your former clerks. And I'm going to have Dylan come up and make a bit of a presentation, and I'll step aside here.
Good.
Chief?
Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. On behalf of my 73 other very fortunate co-clerks that have served the chief over the past 36 years, and all of his 2 staff attorneys during that tenure, and all of the rules attorneys that have served the court under his tutelage, and all of the central staff attorneys that the chief has hired since his time as chief. We wrote a little article about it. We have a Shutterfly book here. It's a legacy not just of law, but of lawyers that the chief is going to leave behind at the end of this year. So we want to present this to you. It's 102 pages of private remembrances. This is the only copy in existence. It's going to you. It's sealed. No one else has seen it. These are not fit for public consumption, but these are our loving memories with you, serving with you, learning from you. We are indebted to you, and we love you, Chief.
I highly recommend, and you should have some copies of the journal, hard copies on the table, or go find it online. But Dylan's article that's in the journal with the same title, A Legacy Not Just of the Law, but of Lawyers, has some of the pictures and some of the remembrances for public consumption. So please, I highly recommend you take a look at that. I want to thank everybody who participated this evening to help us to honor Chief Justice Nathan Hecht. At this point, I'm going to do the last thing I have to do as the president, and that is to call forward Justice Jane Bland and my successor, Lisa Hobbs, for her swearing in, and then some comments from Lisa. Thank you.
Well, so ordinarily when there's a canonization proceeding, we get somebody to play devil's advocate, but there were no takers, although it sounds like maybe all we need to do is admit Dylan's book into evidence. It's my pleasure to, on behalf of the court, thank the society for all you do every year to advance legal history in Texas, and in particular, the court. We are very grateful for all that you do, and in particular to Kendall and Rich and Lisa and all the officers who made tonight's dinner so lovely. Thank you, thank you. And for all of you that are here and you elevated Texas legal history above Texas football, so glad. You chose the better half. So anyway, and it's my pleasure now to swear in Lisa as the incoming president. Okay, here.
You got this right. I know there's like a bright light over there.
I state your name.
I, Lisa Hobbs,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will administer the office
that I will administer the office
of president of the Texas Supreme Court Historical Society
President of the Texas Supreme Court Historical
to
Society
the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
I pledge to faithfully discharge
I pledge to faithfully discharge
my duties
my duty
to preserve for posterity
to preserve for posterity
the lives and work
the lives and work
of the Supreme Court
of the Supreme Court
and the appellate courts of Texas.
and the appellate courts of Texas.
So help me God.
So help me God. I am what stands between, there are two people in this room. Some of you want to get to the Four Seasons bar. Some of you just want to go to bed. But either way, those are both lovely things, and I am standing in the way. So I have nothing to say except for I am so honored to be the president of the Texas Supreme Court Historical Society. Many of you know I was the first ever general counsel and of the court. And I love, as much as I love all the justices that I've served with, and I see so many here in the room and so many that I haven't seen in a long time, what I love most is the institution. And that's what we are about preserving. It's not about the personalities. They make it interesting and dynamic and stuff, but the most precious thing is the institution, and we have to honor that and honor the rule of law. And I'm just so happy to be here. And I did not cry as much as I thought I was going to, Chief Justice Hecht, but he hired me as an intern in 1998. So he was my introduction into the court. He has been a mentor and a friend, and I love you so much. And to be able to be sworn in tonight on the night that you're honored, it's a night I will never forget. So thank you, thank you, thank you.